How's it going, everybody? I am DMGTO, and today we're going to be talking about the E100 line in water tanks. This is not the original video that I planned to do today. Pretty much what I was going to do is the video that Daz Games did, but his video came out 2 hours before mine was scheduled to go out, so that was unfortunate timing for me. So I just decided to scrap that previous video and just kind of pretend it didn't exist, so I went and decided to make this video instead. So pretty much what I'm just going to be doing is just talking about how I would rework the E100 line if it was me in charge of doing it. Now, this video was inspired by a couple of things that I've seen leaked in the last couple weeks. The first one was the rework of the Kranvagn Tier 8, Tier 9 and Tier 10 in that line. The Emil 1, the Emil 2 and the Kranvagn are all being reworked. Pretty much what Wargame is doing is they're boosting up the engine power a little bit to make them a bit more mobile. They're removing a shot from each of their clips, but increasing the alpha damage of each shot that they fire in the clip, which is an interesting way of doing it. It's going to make them a bit more unique and a bit more interesting to play, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's a good idea. So, the fact that they're looking at multiple vehicles in each tree, at least going by that example, made me think that it's potentially possible that they could rework, like as an example, the IS-4 and the E100 line. They could rework Tier 8, 9, and 10 or further if they wanted to in those lines. So maybe the thought was just like, oh, that's a really interesting idea. Like they could rework multiple vehicles and just like completely like update the line or update the hard tier part of the line. So I was thinking like, geez, this is a great idea. Um, and then I was thinking about another thing which I saw a leak of relatively recently, which was a premium tier 7 Tiger 2. Tier 7 Tiger 2, which immediately piqued my interest because I was just thinking like, the fact that they're testing that shows that it may be possible for them to make a tier 7 Tiger 2 and make it pretty balanced. And that got my like brain going, thinking of like what exactly would they do at each tier in order to make that work. If they were to make the Tiger 2 a tier 7 and down here all the vehicles around it pretty much just to make the line make sense, how exactly would that all work? And pretty much this is like the general like idea that I came up with. So as you can see at the moment, we have the DW2 Tier 4, 3001H Tier 5, 3601H at Tier 6, Tiger 1 Tier 7, Tiger 2 Tier 8, E75 Tier 9, E100 Tier 10. So pretty much what I would do is I would cut the DW2 or the 3001H from the line. It doesn't really matter, both of them have the same hull armor layout, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So whichever one you cut out, just make them the same as the current DW2 and it'll work out fine because both of them have the same hull armor. Just give them the same gun selection, the same just overall setup as the DW2 and it'll be fine. Because, well, DW2, I don't hear anybody complaining about that thing. So, yeah, it's not exactly like overpowered, just going by that. So let's just skip on to tier 5, which would be the 3601H in my general concept of this line. So what I would do is I would remove the idiot, sorry, kind of just feel saying idiot there. What I would do is I would remove the idiot L56 from this tank as well as the L70. I would give it a 75mm L48 as grinding gun or an L43 depending on how brutally I was feeling. I would give it a 105mm L28 as like a gun option just so people can choose to derp or not to derp. And then when it comes to the 75mm Wafa, because this thing is pretty much going to be the only tank left that has that gun, because it would be removed in the 3001H because it would be too strong for tier 4 heavy tank, I would just rebalance it so I had about 120, 130 penetration, and around about 110, 120 alpha damage. And then just balance out the DPM so that it works out so it's not too strong. I always thought the 3601H would actually be a pretty decent rival for the KV-1. I mean, if you think about it, the KV-1 has better side armor than this thing. I would argue it probably had a better turret, as long as you get rid of this Panzer 6 H2 turret. If you got rid of this turret here and just had this as the upgrade turret, and then a 3001H like stock turret, or upgrade turret as the stock turret on the 3601H, then I think that would actually work out relatively well. Because I mean, the KV-1 could penetrate the front armor of the turret on the 3601H, and it really wouldn't have too many problems fighting this thing head to head. Like the 3601H wouldn't have too much of a problem penetrating certain areas of the KV-1 as well. So I think this thing would be a relatively good competitor with the KV-1, just because 100mm of armor makes it a bit stronger frontally, but weaker side armor means it won't be able to side scrape as well, and the weak turret will also mean that other tanks are able to penetrate it relatively reliably if they know where to aim. Now, the Tiger 1 is going to be the easiest one to do. Just look at the heavy tank number 6 or the Tiger 131 and you know exactly what to do. Just give it the option of an L28 and an L70 and you're done. The 88mm L56 is fine for a tier 6 heavy tank. Like, all that needs to be done is just remove the L71 gun and you're done. Just bring it in line with the stats of the heavy tank number 6 and the Tiger 131 and that's it set up. So I will also admit though that there is actually a slight advantage for the TAC 3 Tiger 1 if it was just to be down tier to tier 6. It would have a slightly different cupola to the Tiger 131 and the heavy tank number 6. It doesn't have the bin, like, flat cupola. It has like more of a rounded slope cupola, so it would technically be stronger hold down than the heavy tank number 6 or the Tiger 131. So it would technically have a bit of an advantage in some ways. So yeah, if you bring it in line stat wise with the Tiger 131 and heavy tank number 6, it would still technically be a little bit stronger than those vehicles because it'd be a slightly stronger hold down. So yeah, pretty easily done to make that thing balanced with the heavy tank number 6 and the Tiger 131. So next up is the Tiger 2, and what I would do immediately with this thing is I would take the L68 off this gun, or not off this gun, off this tank, because the L68 is way too strong of a gun to have at tier 7. The 105mm L52 though is pretty much perfectly suited to being at tier 7. It's pretty much the exact competitor of the T29's 105mm. Both guns are pretty much made to be competitors. I mean, the L52 gun has only two more penetration than the 105mm that the T29 uses. Just it would probably be more. This gun here would probably be more accurate and have around the same sort of DPM. But T29 hold down wise would just destroy the Tiger 2 at tier 7 in a head-to-head fight. And if you're worried about the Tiger 2's armor being too strong, what you could do is you could add a weak point on the upper front plate in the form of this little machine gun hatch. You could also nerf the little front plate if you wanted to. And you could also nerf the turret roof arm if you wanted to do that as well, to add more of an overmatch zone. It already has an overmatch zone for 122mm guns, but you could take away more armor to make it more penetrable for more vehicles if you wanted to do that. And you could also nerf the cupola a little bit to make that a bit weaker too. So the way I would have this set up is I would have the stock turret set up with the L56 gun, then, or the L56 88mm just to clarify. Then you would get the 88mm L71, then the top turret. Then you would have the option of getting the 105mm L52, or going on to the 75, which would have the L52 as one of the gun options on that tank. So yeah, this thing seems pretty simple to rebalance to make work at tier 7. The only other thing you could potentially do to this thing, if you want to make it even more just balanced for tier 7, is you could nerf the traverse speeds in order to make it a bit less quick to react when it comes to flanking maneuvers. Because I can imagine like having the traverse speeds that it has at the moment would probably be a bit too good for tier 7. You can also mess with terrain resistances too if you wanted to do that as well. So yeah, I think overall it would be pretty much perfectly suited to being a tier 7. So let's move on to the E75, which would basically be a Tiger 2. It would basically be the Tiger 2 that we have at tier 8 at the moment. Aside from the fact that its armor would be a little bit better, just thanks to the natural angling of the tank. So if you look at the upper front plate and the lower front plate on this thing, they're substantially better angled than the Tiger 2's upper front plate and lower front plate. You can just see that just at a glance. So even if this thing had exactly the same armor values on each of the different portions of the vehicle as the current Tiger 2, the armor would be way more effective just because of how good the sloping is on the whole of this thing in comparison to the Tiger II tier 8 at the moment. So the hull wise, this thing would be absolutely fine. When it comes to the guns, the 120mm L55 would obviously be removed because that gun would be way too strong at tier 8. The 105mm L68 would be a perfect top gun for this tank. The L52 and the L71 would be options for grinding on this vehicle. The stock turret would be, as you'd expect, just the Tiger II's turret. Tiger II's upgrade turret just would be the stock turret, and then the upgrade turret would pretty much just be the current E75 upgrade turret, but just with reworked armor values. Instead of having 160 side armor, it would have about 120, and instead of having 250 front turret armor, it would have about 220 to 230. I think that seems about right. So yeah, I think that would resolve a lot of the problems the Tiger II has at the moment. Otherwise, you could basically just make the L68 gun handle exactly like the Tiger II's current L68 gun, and just rework the armor values and stuff on the tank just to make the tank more balanced if you need to. Like, you could nerf the lower front plate if the lower front plate winds up being too strong because of the better angling, just due to it being the 75's armor model. So yeah, pretty much that's that sorted out. So let's go on to the 100. Also, by the way, all these vehicles I'm just assuming will have roughly around the same sort of range of power weight ratio, so it feels like a gradual just like build up in terms of armor and stuff. You're not losing that much speed at each tier, but the tier 9 would be where you would first like lose a bit of speed. So pretty much what I would do for the tier 9 is I would have an E100P. So the E100P would pretty much just be the equivalent of the Maujin for the E100 line. It would have about 2000 health. It would have a nerfed version of this current turret that the E100 has here. It would have no side skirts on the side, so these entire like side skirt zones here would be removed. The tracks would remain because they're not going to be changed. The tracks would still be absolutely monstrous and absorb heat rounds all day every day. But the side skirts would be removed, which would be a pretty big blow to the armor effectiveness of the E100. The lower front plate, I would argue you would probably want to nerf that a little bit just for tier 7's sake. And when it comes to rear armor, I would nerf that down to 120mm as well, just to make the rear armor and the side armor line up pretty much. So yeah, I think overall that would make this thing pretty much suitable for tier 9. I would have the 105mm L68 gun as the grinding gun on the tank, and the 128mm L55 gun as the upgraded gun for the tank. So you could also mess with the engines and stuff and like have a couple different engine options. Like, you could have a 1000 horsepower engine, 1100 horsepower engine, 1200 horsepower engine, then you get up to like a 1300 horsepower engine, just as an example, so you keep around the 10 horsepower per ton mark. So yeah, you could mess with the engines, and stuff, mess with the armor on the turret, just to make sure that the armor's not too strong. Although personally, I think literally just copy and pasting this turret and maybe just changing the armor values by like 10mm each would be pretty much perfect for tier 9. Okay, so now we're talking Okay, so now we're talking about the tier 10 version of the E100. Now, first thing I'm just going to say is I think I'll leave the E100's hull pretty much exactly the same as it is at the moment. Whenever people complain about the E100, it's not usually the hull they're complaining about, it's usually the turret. So we'll focus on that primarily, but if you did need to buff the lower front plate or something on the E100, given the size of the tracks and stuff on this thing, it'd be pretty easy just to mount some track links on this thing, just like sideways on or something, just to improve the armor just a little bit. So yeah. Also, I would probably improve the engine power by like 100 or 200 just in order to make the mobility just a little bit better, to further emphasize the point that this thing is a faster but weaker armored mouse. So yeah. Now when it comes to the turret, pretty much what I would do is I would replace this current turret with a mouse light turret. So the idea behind the mouse light turret is that it would have more overall armor than this turret, but it can only use the 128mm gun. Now, this turret here would technically still be an option on the tank, but instead of being like there's just like a standard turret that you get immediately as soon as you unlock the E100, you would have to grind out this turret and then grind out the 15cm gun to use it after that. So there would be a few advantages to using the Mouse Light turret, and a few advantages to using the E100 turret, or what was known in the game as the E100 turret. So the Mouse Light turret would have overall stronger armor. Just kind of obvious considering it would be technically just sort of like a weaker mouse turret. It would have 8 degrees of gun depression rather than 7. It would have overall better gun handling with the 128mm gun in comparison to the E100 turret. But the E100 turret would have less weight, so the tank would overall be a bit faster. And the E100 turret would have access to the 15cm gun that is kind of like the trademark of the E100. So I think that would be a really good way of just overall just balancing out this tank to make it so that there's 2 gun options and both of them are sort of viable. It kind of reminds me of the M4 Jumbo. The M4 Jumbo has the option of its stock turret, which has way better armor than its upgrade turret, but the upgrade turret gets far better gun options. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of a situation like that. So I think that would just give people far more options in terms of how they set up their tank, and I think that's one thing that people would like a lot more of at the higher tiers, and not like fake options like the MX M454, where you have a choice between a 120mm gun and 130mm gun, where everybody's going to use the 120 because first off it gets better premium rounds, and everybody uses premium rounds, and second off, if you miss one shot with the 130mm gun, your DPM is cut by like a quarter. Whereas you miss one shot if you miss one shot with the 120mm, your DPM is lost by like 400. It's like maybe like a sixth or a fifth of the overall DPM. It really doesn't make that big of a difference, but it's brutal when you miss one shot with a 13cm. So yeah, I just feel like it would make the game a lot more interesting if there were more situations like this where you had the choice between either I can have a more survivable but slower vehicle with a lower alpha gun, or I can have a higher alpha and a slightly faster vehicle but I have way less survivability. I just think that sort of thing would be cool. Now, when it comes to the armor layout for the Mouse Light turret, I haven't quite decided on what I would do with it. I would probably make the side and the rear turret, the side and the rear of the turret probably around 185mm, and then the front of the turret like 245 or 250, just in order to just point out that yes, this armor-wise is better than the E100 turret is in the game at the moment, because you can angle it further, and you can also tank hits on the face pretty much just as well. So yeah, this is the general thought behind that. So let me know what you guys think of these changes that I would make personally in the comment section below. Would you do any changes differently? And I'd be curious if you have any other suggestions on like how you would rebalance specifically the E100 line for now. I'm going to have to put some thought into the IS4 line because there were some rumors going back a while back about the ST1 becoming the tier 10 in the IS4 line and the IS4 returned to tier 9. So I might have to come up with 2 scenarios for the IS4 situation. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one.